StraightallDay.com.
Law of entropy. Some of you have heard of this phrase. Maybe you heard some people online, maybe people like myself or others talk about it. I'm going to explain out what exactly it is, how exactly it works in everyday terms, not scientific terms, because most of you are not scientists. I'm not even a scientist, but I do understand how this works. And I'm explaining to you how it works in your life and why it's one of the most important scientific laws you need to understand. And on top of all that, I'm going to explain to you how it is already affecting your life and how you are already using it or being used by it, guaranteed. Why can I guarantee that? Because this is a scientific law. So first of all, let's get clear. What is the law of entropy? Law of entropy is one of the under the laws of thermodynamics, and what it states is that any object left on its own, or any object period, is naturally going to increase its level of disorder and chaos over time. In other words, over time, there is always more disorder and chaos coming into a system, into a person, into an environment, and into an ecosystem. That's just the natural state of things, that things naturally become more disorderly and more chaotic. That happens with everything and everyone. So to give you some examples, if you, for example, did not brush your teeth or floss your teeth at all for, let's say, a month or 2 months or 6 months, what would happen to your teeth? You know, eventually your teeth would you start getting toothaches or some type of diseases in your gums. You may lose some teeth, you may get some cavities, teeth start falling out. Why? Because you're not taking care of your teeth. What happens? Naturally, you get more disorder and more chaos when it comes to your teeth. With your health, if you didn't exercise, you didn't eat right, and you didn't, let's say, drink water, you didn't eat any fruits and vegetables, you just ate a bunch of junk food, didn't take care of your body in any way, what would happen to your health? Of course, you understand what would happen. Your health would slowly deteriorate, and you would be in a worse shape physically in the future, whatever the future is, than you would be right now. Because the more you don't take care of your body, the more disorder and the more chaos happens with your body. With many of your relationships, if you don't keep in touch with people and remind them that you're there and just keep in contact with certain individuals, what happens to those relationships? They fall apart. Some of you, if you're like me and you never delete contacts out of your phone, you go through a lot of contacts in your phone and you see the name, but you don't even remember who the person is, because you didn't stay in touch with them, they didn't stay in touch with you, and even though you have the information, you don't even remember who the person is because the relationship deteriorated and went into a state of disorder. No, a relationship is not in order anymore because you did not maintain it. Any of you who goes to events a lot, you may meet a lot of people who hand you their business card, you exchange numbers and say you're going to keep in touch, then you never do, and then you forget that they even exist. So these are examples of how entropy works, that things naturally get worse if you do nothing with them. Other examples, you think of an abandoned house. No one's living in the house any longer, and nobody takes care of the house. So eventually you may get some broken windows, you're going to have weeds all in the yard, and the house eventually looks like nobody lives there. Like, a house could be empty and nobody living there, but it doesn't look like nobody lives there if someone's taking care of the house. But if no one's taking care of the house and nobody's living there, then eventually it's going to look like nobody lives there. All right, everybody knows what I mean here. An abandoned house, an abandoned car, exact same thing. So here's the thing you need to understand as it applies to life. Most people over the course of life do not get better. Most people only get worse. I use a tongue-in-cheek example here, even though it is kind of a joke. It is actually true. Any of you who's over the age of 30, if you have not seen many of your high school classmates since you graduated from high school, which was over 10 years ago, I tell you, do not worry, because most of those people, if you were to see them today, you don't need to, because I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to them. They're the same person they were the last time you saw them. Only thing that changed is they got older, they got fatter, and they got uglier. All right, they just gained years, they gained weight, and they're not as pretty as they used to be. That applies to the men and it applies to the women. That applies to most human beings. Most people do not get better over time. Why? Because the law of entropy, I just told you, things naturally get worse over time. So when we say increased disorder and chaos, we can also call that getting worse. Most human beings over time just get worse. All right. There's a period of going up and there's a period of going down. That period of going up and getting better and growing naturally without even trying, that's called puberty. That's what humans hit around, let's say, the age of between 10 and 15. And then puberty is over, let's say, somewhere between 20 and, let's say, 18 and 25. So usually by about age 25, most human beings have done all the growing that they're going to do. That includes the physical growth, that includes mental, emotional, spiritual growth. They have grown into the peak of the person they're ever going to be by age 25. And if they do anything to maintain it, they'll stay at the same spot for the rest of their lives. Most people actually start disintegrating and getting worse over time. I just told you how. You get older, and that often means you get slower. Your cognitive abilities decline. you get fatter. So physically, you're just not in as great shape. Any of you men, for example, you may remember some of your high school classmates, your female classmates in high school or college may have had very nice figures, even though they didn't exercise. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, because they are not exercising, that great figure didn't stay around anymore, because after that, those peak years, if you don't do anything to maintain it, then it slowly goes away. That is an example of entropy, and people just get uglier. All right, so people tend to be prettier when they're younger than they are when they're older. So they just get older, fatter, and uglier. Again, it's a tongue-in-cheek thing, but it also actually applies directly. Any of you think about this, you notice it. Most people only get worse in life because the default state of humanity is to get worse. You get to a certain point by young adulthood, and then you get worse for the rest of your life until you die. That's pretty much how it works. And again, this is a law, and the masses of people tend to not do anything to intentionally make themselves better. This is something that I've been telling people for years, is that in life, the only way you grow after puberty, it must be done consciously and intentionally, meaning you have to do it on purpose. You have to open a book and read something if you want to learn after you get out of school. You have to try to learn more and advance yourself and get better after school is over, because when school's over, no one ever forces you to read a book, to learn anything new, to take a course, to gain new skills, to make yourself a higher quality person. You're never forced to do it ever again after you graduate from school. Maybe at your job, it may be offered to you, and depending on what kind of work you do, maybe you'll be forced into it. But for the most part, most people are not. You can just get a job, show up Monday through Friday, do what you're supposed to do, punch the clock, get your paycheck. And you can do that for 60 years until you die. That's how most people live. It may not seem like that in your myopic world, because maybe you're around high level individuals. Some of you watching this, I would bet that applies to you. Most human beings do not operate in this way. This is why there was a study done years ago that they said once people graduated from their formal school, whenever they finished formal school, not even graduate, just finish, whether that was 8th grade, 12th grade, or college, most people never open another book voluntarily to read it for the rest of their lives. And this is people who are getting out of school at age 18, age 22. Never open another book again for the rest of their lives to read it on purpose. Not any book for like enrichment and growth purposes. They might read some bullshit, but they don't open a book for some enrichment and growth purposes. Why? Because this is the default state to do nothing. The default state of human being is to do nothing. 3 things you should understand about humans. Most people do not think, because thinking is work. They do not read. I just explained to you about the reading. And most people are generally lazy. Why? Because these are scientific laws. We are scientifically designed to conserve energy. So to use energy, a person who is active and energetic and always doing stuff, that is going against the natural state of human beings, which is to sit around and do a whole bunch of nothing. And again, we know most people sit around and do a whole bunch of nothing. Number one, because the law of entropy says most people do nothing. That's why they get into disorder and chaos. And number two, anecdotally, look around at your own life. Look around at the people you know. Look at your coworkers. Look at your family members. Look at the people in your neighborhood. Are most of them always active, doing something, trying to get better and grow? No, most of them ain't doing shit. They're doing nothing. All right, this is the law of entropy. This is exactly what I'm talking about. To get better in life, you have to make a conscious decision, and you have to give conscious effort to get better. Anti-aging, for example, biohacking. You know, any people who are into this stuff, those are conscious decisions that people make and efforts that people make in some way, depending on how you feel about it, to slow the natural entropy process of aging, looking older, or biologically becoming older. I had somebody talk to me once about they want to lower their biological age. I don't look into that stuff. I don't know much about that stuff, but I understand the concept that if you're 40 years old, you want to biologically be 30, because that means your body maybe looks, feels, and operates younger than it actually is. And what you don't want to be is biologically older than you are, because that means you might die before it's your time. You see somebody 50 years old having a heart attack and dying is because of entropy. They weren't taking care of their body in many ways, and they ended up paying for it. The whole point is, to get worse, you don't have to do anything. To get better, you have to do something. This is the reason why most people get worse. Why? Because doing something is work. It requires effort. Most people do not give effort. I just told you, most people are lazy. And if you don't believe me, actually, there's no way you cannot believe me. Look around the world, look at your coworkers, look at your family, look at the people in your community, and tell me I got this wrong. And most of you know enough people that you get a big enough sample size, this becomes really obvious to you. Many of you already understood this before I even said it. So how do you fight off entropy? That's the key question. Is there a way to fight entropy and keep it from attacking you and enveloping you? The answer is yes, there is. Let me tell you what those tools are. And these are things you've heard of before. Principles. What are principles? Principles are etched in stone ideals that you live by, that you do not change, and which have no exceptions. Principles. Most human beings have no principles. It's the reason why most people, you ever heard the saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything? Okay, most people will fall for anything because they have no principles. Next one, standards. What are standards? Standards are modes of operation that, again, are pretty close to set in stone. They are measuring sticks by which everyone in a certain environment are measured, and everyone has to live up to a standard. There are no exceptions to a standard. The standard is everybody here has to be able to do 20 push-ups in one set, and if you can't do 20 push-ups, you can't get a job here. Then that's the standard. We can't lower the standard to bring other people in. If you lower a standard, it's not a standard anymore. Standard is a bar which everybody has to clear in order to be eligible or accepted or deemed acceptable in a certain place. That's what a standard is. Most of you have heard of standards and have had them used on you if you don't use them yourself. Structure is another one of these. What is a structure? A structure is a mechanism that if you fit yourself into it and follow what it says, you're going to produce a consistent, predictable result. That's what a structure is. An example of a structure is a calendar. What does a calendar give you? It marks off every single day. It tells you exactly how much time is going to pass, and you get to decide by what you put in the calendar, what you're going to get done that day and what's not going to get done that day. A calendar is an example, a very simple example, but an example nonetheless of a structure. If you put things on your calendar, then you are giving structure to how your time is being used. I tell people all the time, the simplest way to start using structure is to use a calendar, because all of us have life. All of us have a certain amount of time. We all generally agree that there's 12 months in a year and a certain number of days in each month and a certain number of hours in each day. We all generally agree on that. So if you are not marking off your days, weeks, and months and how you are using them, then you are missing out on the simplest structure you could use, which is known as a calendar. Another form of a structure is if you hire a personal trainer or a coach. What do they represent? They tell you what to do, when to do, where to do it, why to do it, and how to do it. Then they tell you what to do next time. That's a form of a structure. When you have a structure, what comes out of it is discipline. That is our next point. Discipline is a byproduct of structure. Most people try to make themselves disciplined by force feeding discipline upon themselves or trying to use willpower. That's the wrong way to try to be disciplined. And that's the reason why most people who try to be disciplined fail at it. Not because you can't be disciplined, but because you are operating by an inaccurate formula. The accurate formula for producing structure is to have clear principles, set your standards, produce a structure, and out of that structure comes discipline. This is the reason why most people succumb to entropy, because they don't follow this formula. Principles, standards, structure, discipline in this order. And again, how many people do you know who do this? Exactly. That's the reason why most people over time get older, fatter, and uglier. And why does all this matter? The reason why all this matters is because these parameters that I just laid out for you, they keep you on point, focused, they keep you, and they block the natural onset of entropy. On point and focused. How many people here would like to be more on point, more focused, more locked in, more structured? You want to get more done. You want to be more productive, more efficient, more effective at what you do. Everybody who I talk to says that they want to have more of that. The problem is not that they can't do it. The problem is they don't have a formula and they don't follow this formula. Principle, standard, structure, discipline. And what this does is it blocks the natural onset of entropy. It doesn't mean you can keep entropy from happening. It doesn't mean you're not eventually going to get older. It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have to get fatter, but you are going to get older. That's pretty much guaranteed. And you don't have to get uglier either. You can still be pretty even as you age. If you are conscious and intentional about it, then you will be getting better as you age, as you get older. Eventually you are going to die, but you can get more life out of your life when you understand how to fight entropy than if you don't do anything to fight entropy. You just have the time that you have, and you probably end up having a shorter life rather than a longer life, because it takes you longer to get things done because of your lack of structure and discipline. Whereas on the other hand, if you can get more things done faster, you are condensing time frames, which means you get more life into your life, which means your life feels relatively longer simply because you are getting more done in less time than everybody else. That's how you fight entropy, and you block the natural onset of the chaos and disorder that naturally comes with any living being, any structure, any organization, with, again, one more time, principles, standards, structures, and discipline. That's how you fight entropy. You want to learn more about how to do this and how to have it applied directly with me as your coach and directly with my help, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. The link is down below in the description to this video. Work on your game. Dre all